Hi everyone, Rachel here. Welcome to episode number 48 of the Ditch the Diet podcast. So today is part 2 of our two-part series with Dr. Gemma Newman, who is a medical doctor specialising in plant-based lifestyle and nutrition. And so part 1 was last week. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I would suggest you go back and listen to that one first, because this is a continuation of that conversation. So I'm not going to ramble anymore. I'm just going to get right into it.
Yeah, the other thing I thought I should mention is about omega-3s.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah, okay, well, I beat you to it. Omega-3 fatty acids, and that is the benefit of fish.
Mm-hmm.
Fish are full of omega-3 fatty acids, and that's why people consider them a health food. So when you're on a plant-based diet, you think, well, I need my omega-3s as well. They're great for my brain, they're great for my heart. And they sort of split down into a couple of groups. You've got the short-chain omega-3 fatty acids, and you can get those all from plant foods. So ALA, alpha-linoleic acid, that's the short-chain version. And you can get that from flax seeds and chia seeds and walnuts and hemp. And most people do fine on that. They can make those short chains into long chains, and away they go. But I think if you're not great at the conversion into long chains, then it's nice to have a ready-made form. Mm-hmm. And so, if that's you, then you sort of wonder, well, hang on a minute, where do fish get these long-chain omega-3 fatty acids from? Because fish aren't necessarily great at the conversion. Like, how do they do it? Mm-hmm. And the answer is they swim around in the ocean and they gulp algae all day. Mm-hmm. And it's the plants in the ocean that are rich in the long-chain omega-3s, and that's why fish muscle and fish liver has omega-3 fatty acids in, because they came originally from plants. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to get the ready-made long-chain omega-3s, then you can simply take an algae supplement, a EPA DHA algae supplement, and that would sort of sort out your needs. And the advantage of that, I would suggest, is that you're not getting the mercury content, you're not getting the PCBs and the dioxins, you're not getting the saturated fat and the zero fibre. You're just getting the long-chain omega-3s in their purest form, because they haven't bioaccumulated all the toxins that these poor fish have done.
That's really interesting, because that was one of the big questions I wanted to ask your opinion on, because I get asked that all the time.
I hope that's helped.
Yeah, it has really helped, and I'm sure it'll help a lot of people that are listening as well. I'm going to just ask you a few questions that people have asked me about various different products and things when it comes to being vegetarian, vegan, plant-based. You sort of mentioned them a little while ago. Fake meats and fake meats, I'm seeing more and more of these at the moment, and I bought one last week and it actually was so disgusting. I was like, I'm never buying that again. It actually looked just far too much like real beef mince. Like, I bought it and I was like, I'm going to try this just once. But what are your opinion on things like meat replacements, like corn, for example, that's made, I think it's mycoprotein, and soy-based products you mentioned Alpro custard before, but what about like soy-based yogurts, coconut-based products, things like that are sort of alternatives to dairy, alternatives to meat? What are your thoughts on those?
My thoughts are that if you're transitioning to a plant-based diet, sometimes it's nice to have comfort foods. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's nice to have foods that remind you of the foods that you used to enjoy. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're on that road, if you're on that transition, it's probably overall a positive thing. Mm-hmm. I would say that some of the replacement milks are quite high in sugar and emulsifiers. Mm-hmm. So some of them I wouldn't say are sort of as good for you as having the more, dare I say it, unfortunately, the more expensive nut milks and things like that. But you have to sort of look at the overall health picture. So with regard to some of the yogurts, you can get coconut-based probiotic-rich yogurts, which are, I would say, better for your health than the dairy yogurts. But you can also get the yogurts that are full of sugar. Like, you can get a lot of the dairy yogurts that are full of sugar and flavourings as well. So I don't think that the extra added sugar and flavourings are healthy, but I don't see them as being less healthy than the dairy alternatives. And the same with fake meats. I think they have their place. They have to. Because if we talk about the sustainability issues of having a meat-heavy diet, we know that people love their meat and they're going to want to have something that reminds them of that. So, we have to provide that for people. And my hope is that over time, once they've got used to their replacements, they might get a bit more adventurous and start to experiment with the joys of cooking whole food plant-based. So, using the lentils and the chickpeas and the beans in a variety of ways to make them delicious with the added spices and the herbs. But we have to start somewhere. And if you've got someone that's having a very meat-rich, junk food-rich diet, then I think it's definitely an improvement. And looking at the issue of dairy, that can be very polarizing for people. And I think if I just try and stick to the data, I mean, there's been a lot of studies now on milk and bone strength, and unfortunately, they've really failed to find a link between increased dairy consumption and increased bone mineral density. And in fact, a couple of studies I've read have seen the opposite association. And the reason for that may be the galactose content of the milk, because when you look at yogurt, it doesn't have as much galactose because the probiotics have broken it down, and you don't see quite such a detrimental potential effect on the bone mineral density. But with cow's milk, you do see that association. So I think we've got to get it out of our heads that you need dairy for calcium, because you just don't. There are plenty of more bioavailable sources of calcium from green leafy vegetables than there are from the milk of a cow.
There's so many misconceptions about that, isn't there? I think it's because we're brought up to think, it's kind of inbuilt. I suppose we learn it at school, although I don't really remember learning it, but you learn it at school.
It's just, it's so true. I mean, we learn, we get free milk and it's supposed to be really good for us. And don't get me wrong. I think if you have a diet if you have a lifestyle where you're not able to get the nutrients you need, I'm thinking about years ago, maybe in the winter time, you wouldn't have been able to eat all these fresh foods, and maybe you had a family cow or a village cow. Of course, you're going to drink the milk because there's nutrients in there. You have got nutrients to build up a baby cow, so you would drink it because what else is there? But the times have changed, and I think. If we look quite deeply into some of the detrimental effects, we can try and get a bit of balance there, can't we? But it's crazy. I mean, we're also sort of taught that you have to have meat for protein, and of course now we know that's not true. In fact, when you're omnivorous, you're actually more likely to be fibre deficient, which is terribly problematic for things like hemorrhoids and constipation and appendicitis and varicose veins and bowel cancer and goodness knows what else. So it's a real big mental shift, because we all have that as our subconscious, isn't it? It's what we feel like we've been brought up to believe, and that's what I used to believe. And it took me a lot of research to try and unpick that.
I bet. And just touching the protein side of things, you always hear that, you must be deficient in protein, you must not be getting enough protein if you're not eating meat. But what are the best sources of plant-based proteins?
Well, I always like to emphasise legumes, because they're associated with tremendous health benefits in many populations. So you got your chickpeas, you've got your lentils, and you've got your beans, your black beans, your kidney beans, the white butter beans. There are so many, and I think variety is key. But you know what? To be honest, as long as you're eating enough, you will get enough protein. I think this is the misconception people have, is they think I've got to try and have loads of lentils, otherwise I'm going to be protein deficient. But actually, broccoli has protein, carrots have protein. Pretty much every plant food contains some protein. It's just a matter of making sure that you have enough variety so that you get all the other fantastic nutrients at the same time. The beauty of that is that you're not getting any of the other junk alongside the protein. You're not getting the saturated fats and the dietary cholesterol and all the other toxins that we spoke about before. So
What are your thoughts on soya-based products like tofu and tempeh, that kind of thing?
I think that soy is probably the most misunderstood bean in the world.
Yeah, I was reading another article about it last night, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, I mean, soy is known to be beneficial for reducing risk of breast cancer, reducing risk of ovarian cancer, reducing risk of endometrial cancer, and increasing bone strength. And you think to yourself, why is that? And the reason is it's a selective estrogen receptor modulator, SERM, selective estrogen receptor modulator. And so it's amazing how it works. Is it preferentially binds? So there's trying to explain it. So there's two types of estrogen receptor in the body. You've got your alpha estrogen receptors and you've got your beta estrogen receptors. And when you have mammalian estrogen, like our own estrogen, or estrogen from horses, which is what we use for hormone replacement therapy, that will preferentially bind to the alpha receptors, and so that's why when you're having HRT, you might potentially marginally increase your breast cancer risk and things like that, or you might marginally increase your risk of blood clots because the liver also contains these alpha estrogen receptors. But the beauty of soy is that it preferentially binds to the beta receptors, and those are located in the bone. So what's amazing about it is that it prefers to bind to the receptors that mean that you're getting the health benefits from having this so-called phytoestrogen, but you're not getting any of the downsides. You're not getting man boobs. You're not getting any of the other issues. So it's quite amazing because you can improve your bone strength and reduce your hot flushes and reduce your cancer. I read a study. There was a study where, oh God, I hope I get this right, but that they were asking people that it was a randomized control study, and they had 3 cohorts of women, and they wanted to monitor their bone strength over 2 years. And they gave one cohort 2 cups of soy milk a day. They gave one cohort some progesterone cream, and they gave one cohort nothing. They were like the control group. And what they discovered was that the control group had a gradually reducing bone mineral density over the course of the 2 years of the study, which you'd expect. The progesterone cream group had less of a reduction in their bone mineral density, which was great news. But the 2 cups of soy milk drinking cohort had an increase in their bone mineral density over the course of the 2 years. So I think that was just a nice example of how soy has some tremendous health benefits and has been quite sorely misrepresented, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm so glad that you said that, because I almost went off on one last night. Again, I had stopped myself, but someone on my news feed, and I should just scroll past these things, but I was very close. very close. Had shared an article that said something along the lines of doctors warn against soy products because of the increased risk of breast cancer or something like that, and I was like, no. And the person that shared it has like quite a big influence and all the comments on it, and I thought, oh my goodness, this has got to stop. So I'm so glad.
Well, hopefully interviews like this will help.
Yeah,
because
exactly. That's it, isn't it?
It will help people to sort of point them in the right direction. But no, I don't think we need to be afraid of soy. In fact, if people are worried about man boobs, then they really need to avoid beer, because beer contains the most potent phytoestrogen known so far. What's it called? 8PM, I think. And what happens with that is that when you drink the beer, it's contained in the hops. That the hops that you need, what do they do? It's like the bittering agent that you use to make the beer. And what it does is, when you're drinking the beer, you've got this phytoestrogen, and then it mixes up with your fecal microbes, and then it potentiates the effect by about 10 times, which is why, if you've got a beer belly, you're also likely to have man boobs. So I would stick away from beer. If anyone's worried about soy, tell them to avoid beer instead.
I'll put that in the show notes, make sure it goes out along with the podcast. Just before we finish up, practically, how would one go about transitioning to a plant-based diet if someone has listened to this and thought, I would really like to, I don't want to go vegan, maybe I don't want to commit to vegetarianism, but I would like to start being more concerned with the number of plant-based foods that I eat, what would be some practical ways to do that?
Well, I think that would be absolutely fantastic, because they would be dramatically reducing their risk of chronic disease, even if they make some small changes. So that would be a big congratulations first off. Then I would suggest, as I say, I'd suggest some simple meal swaps, really, just to kind of get them going, because I think it depends who you are. Like if you're cooking for a family, then you're going to want to be trying to cook stuff that everybody's going to eat. So you'd look at what you're currently doing, and you'd add in more veggies. So, like I said before, the simple meal swaps that I tell people to try, and I love certain recipe books that are just so easy. And sometimes I'll say to my patients, "Oh, you should try this one." I'm a huge fan of the Deliciously Ella books. I think she makes it really simple. Yeah. And the same with I'm a huge fan of the Happy Pear recipes for happiness. And they've got such good ideas for just boosting the amount of vegetables and reducing the amount of crowding out the bad stuff. So it depends just how much time I'd have with them, but I'd suggest a few breakfast ideas, a few snack ideas, a few lunch ideas. So porridge is a great breakfast. I think, if you're going to make a start, maybe make one change a week, you start with porridge. Maybe that's the first meal that you change, and you'd add in your flax seeds and your chia seeds, and maybe your soy milk or your nut milk, and you'd add in a bit of cocoa powder or cacao powder, or you'd add in some coconut flakes or anything else to kind of jazz it up a bit. Maybe you add a bit of a protein powder from a smoothie, which would put a nice taste to it, mix it all up. Fresh berries, that's just the ultimate breakfast. You can start getting into breakfast smoothies and smoothie bowls if you want. And you can start getting into making these amazing plant-based pancakes, which are super healthy. So it kind of depends on where they're at, but I'd suggest maybe trying to change one or add in one meal a week. Because if you think about it, when you're cooking for yourself or you're cooking for your family, there's pretty much only about 5 meals that most people alternate. So once you can think of 5 meal swaps that you do, maybe adding another one each week, then pretty soon you've got a whole repertoire going.
That's exactly what I did. Exactly what I did when I was making the switch, is just gradually just change one meal at a time. I didn't just wake up one morning and go, right, I'm never eating meat again. It was just a really gradual thing, because I have IBS as well, and that would not have been a good idea to suddenly just increase the amount of legumes and plants that I was eating. It would have been a disaster waiting to happen.
It would. You'd have got very bloated. Very, very windy.
But it's surprising how quickly your body adapts, isn't it?
I know, it does. It does adapt, and that's great, because it means that you're growing more of the beneficial gut bugs, so they're able to digest these things much more easily. And it's the galactose oligosaccharides in the legumes that make you feel bloated, especially if you've got too many of them up top in the small intestine, then you can feel a bit bloated. So take it easy and make sure that you're soaking and rinsing if you're having a few sort of extra digestive issues to start with. But that's kind of how I'd suggest it. I would suggest it to do it gradually, so it just becomes more of a habit, more of a lifestyle, rather than thinking I'm going to go vegan and then after a week thinking, oh, I feel rough. I'm farting all the time. Oh, I don't like it.
Not a nice person to be around right now.
I know.
It's like anything that you're trying, like when you're making changes to your lifestyle, the slower and more gradual you do it, the more part of life that it becomes. Trying to give yourself a huge overhaul all in one go is never really not the most successful way of doing things. So
no, I think you're so right. I mean, I know a couple of people that once they realised some of the ethical and the environmental issues, they said, right, that's it, I'm going to go vegan, and then they didn't quite get the health. After a few days, they're thinking, oh, I'm feeling a bit bloated, or or that they just sort of tuck into all the junk foods, and they'd be surprised that they're not necessarily feeling 100%. I think these health changes are made, I think, best made gradually. But if you're already eating relatively healthily, then you could probably make the switch quite quickly and then notice some big improvements. But again, it depends where you're at. Like if you have something like IBS and you notice a sudden improvement, that's great. But if you're generally fit and well and young and healthy, you might not notice that much, except that you might, improve your 5K running time, or improve 10K running time, or maybe you'll notice that you can go running again the next day when previously you'd have to wait a day or two because you were so achy. So Like, if you've actually got an illness, then you probably will notice the benefits really fast. Like, I've had patients that have been having horrendous hypertension, and within 2 weeks they've normalised their blood pressure and they feel great and they can't believe it. So I think so some people do benefit from a sudden switch, especially if they've got a chronic disease that needs to be dealt with quickly. But otherwise, if you've got the time, and if you want to make this a long-term investment into your health, then just take it gradually and enjoy each step.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it a lot, and I'm sure the listeners appreciate it a lot as well. It's been really very interesting. If people want to find out more about about you and about what you do, where's the best place to find you?
Well, I am on Instagram, as most people are now in the health space. I think that sort of, so I'm on Instagram as Plant Power Doctor, Plant Power Doctor, and then I'm on Facebook as Dr. Gemma Newman. If you want to look up my page, and you can also contact me via Plant Based Health Professionals UK. I'm an advisory board member of Plant Based Health Professionals UK. So those are the three main places.
Fantastic. That's really cool. Thanks to Instagram that I found you as well. So
wonderful.
Great.
It does really help to connect people, doesn't it? And I think it's generally quite positive, I would say. Like, I'm on Twitter as well, but I don't really go on there because I find it quite. There's a lot of negativity going on there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we did an episode, myself and a friend, the previous episode that just came out today. Actually, we were talking about the pros and cons of social media. So that was episode number 46. If anyone wants to go back and listen, it's a good one.
Yeah, it sounds great. I think I'll take a listen.
Yeah, it's a good one. Thank you again so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure.
I'd just like to say thank you again to Gemma for taking the time out of her busy schedule to come and talk to us about plant-based nutrition. I hope you've enjoyed the last 2 weeks of podcast episodes, and if you have, please make sure that you leave a review and subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you're listening, either iTunes or Spotify. It would really help if you could just click the subscribe button. It means that you won't miss any future episodes, and it really helps us to push the podcast out to more people. And in order to help more people, then we need a little bit more reach, so I would really appreciate your help in that area. As I said last week, if you'd like to learn more about plant-based nutrition and what Gemma does, all the links are in the show notes, and all the studies and scientific literature that we've quoted in both episodes is cited on my website in the show notes as well. So if you're interested in learning more about this, then you can go ahead and download those there. If you'd like to know more about the Ditch the Diet Academy and what I do, then you can go to ditchthedietacademy.com and just click on the Academy. Just to let you know that the Academy is closing at the end of November until January, as we are refurbishing the membership site, reopening in January. So if you would like to secure your membership at the current price before it rises in January, then make sure you go and check that out. If you're stuck in a chronic cycle of yo-yo dieting and would like to learn how to improve your relationship with food, then the Ditch the Diet Academy is for you. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll see you again next week for another episode of the Ditch the Diet podcast.